20 times a day. Could he not pick up a phone and call Cherokee Nation and make a connection? And I was told, if you want to do it, go ahead and do it. I said, well, I don't work here, but I will if you won't do it. So I haven't heard word back from them since then. I thought 2 weeks ago. Still looking.
Titus, was that window insulation, or what was it?
Number one, new shingles on the roof. Majority of them are on the ground. Number two, window frames. I can look through the frames and see outdoors. That's not cool in the winter, but they're there. So that's what I'm looking at, is shingles in the frames and windows.
But Titus, what's the holdup why they cannot do those repairs?
Paperwork has been completed on my part, on their part. Inspections have been done. The roof has been inspected. EPA representative from HUD came out and inspected, reported. All that is done. All that is necessary now is to have somebody specified that will come out and be able to handle that in accordance to rules and regulations that apparently have sprung up out of nowhere, because this has been going on for years. I don't know where the new rules come from. Excuse me?
Is that because of the lead-based paint?
Lead paint. Every home in Oklahoma is painted with lead-based paint. So it can't be a new obstacle that they're facing unless it's, I don't know. That's all I want to say.
Titus, did you say this, that the Cherokee Nation is rehabbing your house?
No, I said our facility here, where I applied, filled out my paperwork, we're at a standstill right now. What I said was Cherokee Nation does this on a daily basis.
Oh, I got
since
it.
they have a large, adequate housing group that they can handle such situations. When we have 2 people here trying to work on 10 houses, they're overwhelmed. I leave it at that.
Also having to address the problem
Are there other tribal members with housing problems?
They're not housing problems. They're my housing problems.
We're under new business, and John Thomas, Ford district, New Jersey, and Pennsylvania. And I'd like for John to address us a little bit about your report, John. That's acceptable.
Thank you. Thank you, Chief. Thank you, Council. And thank you for supporting my trip back to our homeland. And as you know, my first trip that I went out on, it was kind of like an urgent consideration by some of our support group out in New Jersey who was concerned about the craft collection. And we did address that, and I did give a report about that the last time. And it was a legitimate complaint, and we did address it, and they did bring all of our artifacts and stuff back up to par and where they should be in a climate controlled area. Plus I did other works while I was out there. I was gone 2 weeks that first trip, and as it turned out, we uncovered other areas that of concern for the Delaware nations here. And so the second trip I went back, I wanted to finalize and tie together the work that I did the first time. And I know on behalf of the chief and on the council here, I agreed to stop by Ohio and to check out the reburial site at the Schoenbrunn, I think that's the way it's pronounced. And they looked at the site, talked to the people involved in it, and it's a very secure site, very beautiful area. It's an old village site, and I don't see any problem with the reburial effort that's going to go forward in late October, I think it is, he mentioned. And while I was there, I did have a chance to go to the Guttenhutton massacre site, and purpose of that was to have prayer ceremony and remember our ancestors who were slaughtered there at that time. And so we did have a ceremony there at that site. From there, I left on July 7th, by the way, and on July the 8th, I spent 2 days there in Ohio, and then I went on into Delaware Water Gap on the Pennsylvania side. And at the time, the Delaware Youth Council in the camp was all in town from the Wisconsin, from the Western Delawares and here. And Linda Pola, she was in charge of the welcoming ceremony, and they want to have a stage and a cedar ceremony for the children, our students, while they were there, and we helped her. I have a brother, adopted brother, that lives up with the Canadian Indians, and he knew the language. He learned the language here just over the course of the last 15, 20 years. He didn't know it, but he learned it. And so he was able to give the prayer in a Delaware language. And of course, we helped out with other prayers and cedering and in the staging of our youth. That was very important to do that, because that is a sacred site, and that whole Delaware Water Gap area is a very sacred site because of all the historical burial sites and that is along that path. And we were afraid, it's always in our, we was always taught not to walk on our graves. We were always taught that to be careful where you step and what you do. And so we want to make sure that these children had protection should they wander into an area that may not be marked, and they may not know what might have been there. And so Linda made medicine bags for each of them to carry with them during the time they were out there for their safety. And so we did that. That was a day too that I had a medical emergency with Faye. That same day she had a slight heart attack, and I had to run her into the emergency room, etc. She spent 2 days in a hospital. I give my initial itinerary to the chief before I left, and since that happened with our medical emergency, I had to change around my schedule. But nevertheless, we continued on. I continued on with the work that I had to do, and so after a little bit of rest period there, we on July 19th, I went to Westchester, Pennsylvania, to meet with the Historical Society there. They had a grant, and they redoing their museum, and they wanted consultation from us, and also Bryce was there. And they wanted to make sure that everything that they did pertaining to that wasn't anything insensitive to our people, and that the history was done correct. And after that, July 21st, we went back to the Delaware Water Gap for the final ceremonies of the children of our youth who was going home the next day. So once again, we had sage and cedar ceremony for them, and thanking that Creator for their safety and their safety back home. And then on July the 26th, I visited a guy named Walt Papora. He's a professional artifact collector. He's been doing it since he told me since 1958 he's been walking up and down in our territory there, gathering up our artifacts and probably rummaging through our burial sites and etc. And he just had an immense amount of artifacts that he has collected and found. He's a professional artifact buyer and seller. And as a matter of fact, he was the vice president of the what you would call the artifact collectors, or so this was a guy I've been wanting to see for a long time, and I finally met him. But nevertheless, he was very cooperative with us, and is willing to work with us in any way that he could. And we had some suggestions for him pertaining to the question that he had. But anyway, it was a good visit with him. I'd like to say here that I had a lot of pictures that I also took during this trip, and I was in a process of downloading them on a disc for each of the council people, and one for the tribe, where you could just put the disc in the TV and look at the work that I did while I was back there. I fought my computer all day today, and I didn't get it together today, but I will have it for you. And after that, on July 23rd, 25th, we were invited to Native American church ceremony there in New Jersey. My uncle came out from Colorado to run the services, and so we spent 2 days there in prayer in Sweat Lodge in Native American church ceremony. As all y'all know, those services last all night long. So after that, on July the 25th, and this is probably the most important part, one of the most important parts of my trips, is we met with the Superintendent John Sullivan at the Delaware Water Gap. And I asked him, I knew that they had some positions there available at their headquarters at their archaeological site where they're building, where they are years behind, and they have also tons and tons of artifacts, and most of them are ours, or come from our people, from the Delawares. And we asked him if we could place 2 or 3 people there to help categorize and do what we could with their artifacts. They had burial items, but I think a lot of their items now has been handled by the NAGPRA process. And during the course of that conversation, of course it came up, is the bottom line, the dime. And he said, we have a lot of very influential contacts that supports our efforts here, and we're willing to tap into them to help bring. And I asked for 3 students or 3 people from each of the 3 tribes, the Westerns, the Wisconsin Delawares, and here. Each of us send a person out there that could be trained and also schooled in becoming a curator, a museum curator. And as it turned out, during the time of our discussions, it turned out that if we're going to do something along that line, then we're going to have to send somebody out there that already has a degree, a college degree. It doesn't have to be an anthropologist.